Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and we are live. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. We'll figure it out, though. But for right now, thank you for joining us for lessons on self-care from a trauma-informed perspective for social service providers, teachers, and child care professionals. Before we get started and go through, I'm going to go through just a couple housekeeping slides real quick. And sorry again for the technical difficulties up front here. Okay, so this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on the website in the members portal. 1 to 3 days after this webinar ends, you're going to get an email with a recording with the webinar, the PDF slides, and a YouTube link. Your phone lines and computer speakers are muted. We'll have time for question and answer at the end. And just to keep things simple, we won't be unmuting people today for questions. So please type your question for Father Reagan in the questions box. And all questions not addressed during the webinar will receive an email response. And then I'm going to address this now and then really quickly at the end. So bear with me. So this webinar offers 1 continuing education credit. So in that 1 to 3 days after this ends, you're going to be getting that SurveyMonkey, the YouTube link, and those PDF slides. And you just click into that SurveyMonkey link. It's a quick evaluation, 10 question evaluation, 10 question post-test, press submit. You have to get an 80 or above, or the system asks you to take it again to make sure you get an 80%. And within 10 days after you take it, you'll receive your CE certificate. I know a lot of you have been through this before.
Hey, Ben, I don't think they can hear you.
Oh, I think
I can't hear you. The sound is going in and out.
Oh, can you guys hear me? Let's see.
Oh, some people can hear. Some people can hear.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
All right, I'm going to talk a little louder. Yep, sorry. Basically done. So now I'm going to go over that really quick at the end here, but I'm going to just introduce Father Reagan. He's the former DD at Catholic Charities of East Tennessee. He's the current director of the MSSW program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And he's the current special assistant to the president of Catholic Charities USA, Sister Donna. And he helps provide a behavioral health perspective in different areas. He's also educated the heck out of this network, including me. And we're happy to have him here again to teach all of us. I always look forward to his webinars. And thanks, Father Reagan, and take it away.
Sure, thank you. You know, I feel like we've done this webinar a couple of times, and I feel like that it sort of just demonstrates some of the things that I'm going to be talking about, how difficult it is sometimes to do your work from home, especially when there's technical glitches. So, Ben, do you think I'll just be saying to go to the next slide, or will I be able to change the slides?
I'll do it for you, but we're gonna stay on this screen. We'll do it like this for now until we can figure it out. And
Okay. Well, then we can go to the next one. Okay, so basically, this is just something that I wanted to just kind of share with you guys, that there's so many people out there that really aren't aware of the importance of being able to take care of ourselves. That, like, sometimes we just find ourselves in the situation like this person who's quoted, someone who is a case manager at a behavioral health care clinic, and just was wondering, why am I so tired and why am I so irritable all the time? Well, it's because her work was just weighing on her so heavily, and she was unable to really explore that or express it or recognize it. So now, since she's just learned about the concept and learned this is what is happening to me, that I know that there's a heavy burden that's on me, then that she was able to experience something a little bit different, since she was able to learn about it. So maybe Ben, we can skip down to two slides. Okay, so first, just as we get going, here in this like in quotes room today, we've probably got people that are doing feeding programs, that are doing case management, that are working with child welfare, that are doing work with elders, that are working with families. I mean, just think about all the different things that our network does across the whole country. I feel like sometimes when I think, gosh, I'm the only one that understands how stressful this is, or gosh, I'm the only one that really gets it, that can be that kind of isolating thing can be something that's really difficult for us, and can be something that is for participating in some of the burnout and stress that we experience as work. But if we think about all the people that are on this call right now, and think about how cool that is, that we all do these different things, but yet we do it all under this same banner of our values and of our faith, and what we think is really important, and the dignity of the human person. We're all in this together, and that's what's the greatest thing, is to never forget that we are all together. We're never alone in this work that we're doing with each other, and with the Spirit of God that works through us and with us. So maybe the next slide. Oops, maybe one up. That kind of gave the secret away anyway. But like, if I could ask you guys, like, if you see these 9 dots, and if I asked you, could you connect them with your pencil with 4 different lines, just 4 lines, but not take your pencil off of the paper to draw the lines? Well, we've already gotten a little bit of a peek of it over there. You can kind of see what the solution is. Maybe we could go to the next slide and see it. That you can see we have to go outside the box to connect all these lines together. So I feel like that's the biggest thing. When we think about this time that we're in, this is a time that our generation has never seen during this pandemic. And the way that we're doing it, the way that we're working, the way our lives have changed, the way that we're doing everything so uniquely and so differently, we've been forced out of a box. But I think a lot of times, if I just say, I'm going to continue to do things the way that I did before, but yet I'm going to do them in this totally different environment, then that is going to be not real successful. So we are called to step outside the box as well. So we're being forced into doing things in new ways. We may be really resistant and saying, I'm going to hang on to the wall, and I'm not going to move into it. But I've got to try to be flexible so that I can move into doing things outside the box as well. And maybe, what box have I locked myself into that I am feeling scared or nervous to try to get out of? You know, that's sort of a natural human response to want to kind of stay. This is the way that I do it. This is the way that I've always done it. This is what I know. This is what I'm comfortable with. But now we're being forced out to be able to think, okay, I have to do this over the computer, or I have to do this in a socially distant way, or I've got to rethink how I normally do my stuff. That's really stressful and really tough to kind of come out of that routine thing. So just acknowledge, don't be mad at yourself, and don't be frustrated with yourself if you feel like you've got this very comfortable box, and it is scary to have to step out of it. It's okay to feel that way, but I think there is a real call for us to think about, how am I going to adapt my life into this new reality? And so how am I going to do that? So let's maybe move to the next slide. So look at this. If I asked you, maybe if you've got a piece of paper or something in front of you, maybe you could draw just a line across the piece of paper, and you could maybe on one end of the piece of paper write a word that is affirming for being together with other people. Like, what's a word for you that's affirming and that's positive and that brings good feelings about being together with other people? Like, maybe you could use the word community, or maybe the word family, or maybe the word togetherness, or friendships, or whatever word you might want to use there for the word together. Okay, so think about that, and think about how great it is to be with people. Think how neat it is to be, at work in the coffee room or whatever it is, that kind of get together around the water cooler and kind of chatting about stuff, or think about how neat it is to be with other people. But then think about, there's a continuum of being with people, like we'd be with big crowds or smaller crowds or just one person, and then all the way over to where on that continuum to where we are alone. So if maybe I could ask you to think of a word that's an affirming term for being alone, like maybe it's meditation, or maybe it's solitude, or maybe it's time to myself, whatever sort of word or phrase that you would name for that being alone, and that you like, that's affirming, that's positive for yourself. Okay, so once you've identified these 2 words, the one for together and the one for alone, maybe I'll say, like, I could use the word community, and I might use the word solitude for myself, and for the 2 words that I like to think for myself from a positive way. And then everything in between that might be okay, and that's the way that we sort of live our lives. Well, you know what? During this period of the pandemic, we've had to push the boundary and push the line a little bit further beyond what we feel comfortable. So it's like we've gone from community, for me, to maybe being overcrowded, or maybe overwhelmed, or maybe too much when we're at home and our family's here and our kids are trying to do school, and our spouse is trying to do their work at the desk and trying to get things done, and there's cooking going on, and there's the blender's blending, and I'm on a Zoom call, and all that kind of stuff that's going on. we've pushed past like our normal sort of affectionate feeling for being together into a thing where people are getting on your nerves and people are kind of tough and it's just really difficult. So that's a tough spot to be in. So I think it's important just to realize, again, this is normal. It's a normal human reaction to feel this. This is how I've defined sort of the parameters of my life of togetherness and alone, and I'm being pushed beyond that. The same thing with the alone deal. And once we're pushed past that, the alone concept to where solitude or peacefulness or meditation, to a thing that's like isolated and lonely and afraid or separated or desegregated or something like that, or segregated. I mean, so think about how we're off alone and segregated from others that we're normally used to being with. A friend of mine, actually, she is very much of a social person, and they've actually now closed her office. She's not going to go back to work. She's going to continue to work at home. And she's just really bummed out and down about that because she's alone all the time. And her normal way of socializing with people is to go to a gym or to go out to eat. And it's just not been great for her. So I think just this recognition of this continuum of our normal life has been pressed and pushed beyond the walls. So maybe let's go to the next slide. So this kind of highlights just a concept for us, the notion of grief. To think that really this is a time of grieving. Not only grief of those that maybe have been close to us that are lost, or that we have lost through death, or have seen people struggle through sickness and sadness, that there's a sense of grief with that. But if we think about this idea of grief as being something that's really a part of the human experience, but to think about that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had those 5 stages, but also there was a 6th stage that was meaning making. That despite this struggle and despite the loss and despite the death or whatever that was happening that's negative, that we're grieving for, and we're in this process of grieving for, to recognize that there is something where it's beyond just sadness or whatever and just acceptance, like I'm just going to accept it and shrug my shoulders and go on, but to where there's meaning making. Can I find some form of meaning in this? Can I find a way to identify with my clients better? Is a way that I can find a way to connect with others in my community better? So this idea of grief plus this idea of meaning making being as a part of the grief process really is kind of something I think important for us. And maybe the next slide. To think here that I think a lot of times we think I've got to go through these stages of grief, 1, 2, 3, but really, as you can see on the right there, that slide, that my experience of grief is all over the place. I'm really unique in how I'm going to live this out and how I'm experiencing this, and how am I going to find meaning, and how am I going to find acceptance, and all those things. And to know that my path is my path, and that for me to understand how I'm learning from this, or what I'm gaining from this, or what I'm struggling with is really my own path. And I can share that with other people and talk to others about it, but just to recognize that I don't have to be like other people. Other people might be doing just fine with this, but really I'm struggling with it. That's okay. And I think that's a big, huge, gigantic part of it. So what if we look at the next slide? So just a couple real quick things just to kind of highlight and just to sort of enumerate. These are things that have been going on since we've begun this time of social distancing during the pandemic. And that we can see that during this time, there's frustration, we're unsure about where's this all going. Like sometimes we have insufficient information. Why aren't there more vaccines out there? What's happening with them? What are we doing? And I feel like that big time, a loss of control is a big deal. I think many for us, I know maybe this is true of you, but like myself as a social worker, I've really liked being in control of things. I'm the one that's controlling the schedule. I'm the one that's kind of guiding my clients' lives and stuff like that. I'm in casework because I like to plan and schedule and all that kind of stuff. But really, I'm out of control. I have no control over this, how I react or whatever, how people are reacting and what's going to happen and what's going to unfold. There's a lack of control there. And I think that's really something to identify within ourselves as well. So maybe we could look at the next slide. So here's some things that we can think about during the effects here. The financial loss that we're dealing with, and then stigma, like if, just this thing, how are we responding? If you see somebody that's wearing a mask wrong or something, and there's all this stigma that kind of we place on it, and it's become this political weapon. We're sort of, what are you or aren't you kind of stuff, and that's really tough. And then how do we find some sort of a routine within this bit of a chaotic kind of time period where we just don't know where we're headed? So maybe we could get the next slide. Oh, okay. So let me just point out a really important thing. I feel like I've named a couple things that are kind of key or sort of foundational, I think, to understanding this specific stressor that we're in with the pandemic. But before we really look at even some more issues or problems or struggles or difficulties, or before we get to some solutions, I kind of want to highlight something that I think is really important, and I think that we all need to recognize, and that's the concept of resilience. If we think about what resilience is, and resilience is kind of our ability to bounce back, the ability to kind of rebound from a difficult time period that we might be having. So think about this. I like to think about resilience as kind of like a rubber band. If you had a big long rubber band and if you pull it, it's stretched to the max, and there's a lot of tension, and just oh gosh, can it go any further? And if you go any further, it might break. And then you kind of let go of it, and then it goes back. It kind of goes back to its original shape. So with that, we think of that as resilience. But I'd like to challenge us to look at it just a step further beyond just that statement of rebounding to where we were before, but to think about it as a way of that maybe I'm even stronger or even better. Like, I wonder if the situation with the rubber band coming back to its own circle, but really think maybe it might be a little stronger, or it might be a little bit better because it did that. Hopefully that can be us in our process of resilience, to think, how can I be stretched to the max, but then realize that I have resilience and I can be back to my old self, but maybe not just my old self, but maybe I can be a new self, and use this as a kind of a post growth period, a post difficulty growth period, rather than just a stress period. So that's one thing to view with resilience and how important that is. Okay, so maybe we can look to the next slide and talk about some of these concepts of resilience. So maybe we could just go to the next slide and we'll start talking about the specific things. Okay, so one thing that's really an important ingredient in the whole mix of resilience is the concept of connection. So this concept of connection is being able to relate to other people. Now, this has been the toughest part, because we can't go to our favorite restaurant, or our Wednesday night bar night, or bowling, whatever it is we do. You know, we can't do those things. It's hard to connect right now. So how can I connect? And why is it so important? So I think if we look at the way our human brains are structured, from the very, very beginning of our time, like from the time we're very first conceived, we are relational people. You know, at first we're relating to our mom because we're dependent on everything from her, and so we live life there. But then when we're born, you know, we have this thing, and how important it is to be connected to our parent. There's this connection process we call you know, attachment. And attachment is such an important element. It's really how we build the architecture of our brain through the process of attachment. So, like, say for instance, you know, a little baby gets hungry, and you know, the baby's being held by their parents. Then the baby might cry or be frustrated. Well, if the parent is identifying with the baby, say, "Oh, I know, this is sad." Well, that is a great thing, because the baby realizes, "Wow, somebody gets me. Somebody gets that I'm hungry. I feel like I'm not alone in this world." And the same thing when the baby's like kind of goo-goo and unhappy, when the parent responds back, "Oh, I'm happy too." That serve and return that goes from the parent to the infant, that is so important, because the baby's feeling affirmed for their emotional reaction or their own kind of thing. And it's developing these neuronal connections that are in the brain that allow the human to begin to relate and to develop as they grow through life. That just shows from the very instant of our life, we were beginning, that attachment is so important. So no wonder it's so important for us now as adults. And to have to be forced to not be attached to others in a real way is really difficult. So I feel like there's all these opportunities. What can we do to try to connect? Can we use, like, I have a weekly Zoom thing with my cousins, and we get together and kind of talk and laugh through that way. You know, of course, all the things that we do outside, or I've taken a lot more walks than I ever thought that I would, because of being outside is a little bit safer. So I think whatever creative way can I come up with to try to connect with others is going to be really important, and a significant aspect of the resilience part of our lives. So maybe we could look at the next ingredient this is my attachment thing. So, like, sorry, I forgot I had this slide here. This is a great one, because some of us have different levels and needs for connection. So think about this. If we look at attachment theory, we see that there are different ways, there are different responses to attachment that people have. Some people are really afraid of abandonment. So that might be a high anxiety of abandonment. That's a little bit more over there where the Charlie Brown and Lucy are. But some people that really aren't worried about that, that's a little bit more where Peppermint Patty and Schroeder are. But then if we look at, there's a high proximity seeking versus a low proximity seeking, that this is a really important concept too. Do I really have a drive to be with other people? Maybe, or do I have much more of a drive to be with people, but maybe not as significantly? So it's important for us to kind of look, what is our attachment style, or what is with other people? Am I pretty secure? I could talk to anybody that needed to listen to me, or am I up there where Peppermint Patty is, because that's more low anxiety of abandonment and high proximity seeking? Or am I maybe in the fearful category there down there with Charlie Brown, where I'm not seeking much interaction with people, and also I'm really worried that I'm going to be left behind because of a fear of abandonment. Maybe we can kind of identify where are we on this little grid of attachment, and to think about that in relationship to what are my needs during this time frame. Okay, so maybe we can look at the next slide. So I don't know, people nag us all the time about being active, and we got to get up, move around. Sitting is the new smoking, and all this kind of stuff. Well, I feel like that I've read some new stuff about this. How important it is just to interact with our muscles in some way, even if we're just kind of standing up, going around. If we're just take a walk around, that's just important enough just to kind of get a little bit of an adrenaline going. It's so easy for myself. I mean, I come out here and sit at the kitchen table and just sit here and work all day, and oh, wow, I haven't moved much. But so I need to get up, and maybe once every little bit, set an alarm and remind myself to get up and stand up and just kind of interact my muscles and act my muscles just a bit. It just can be short bursts during the day or whatever. So there's all kinds of creative ways that we can try to be active. Another thing that's really important is some sort of a connection to the outdoors. Even if I was to sit with my desk and be able to see the outside, like right now I can look outside and see the grass out there and there's trees out there. Gosh, that makes me just feel better. Research shows how important it is to be able to have some visual or interaction somehow with the outdoors, rather than just being inside with fake air being recycled through or whatever. How important that part is. That's a big factor, I think, for our resilience. A little bit of activity and being able to recognize the deal about a connection to outside, even if I'm able just to look out there. Okay. So the next slide. Then another thing that's really, really, really important, I think, is this idea of taking notice. So if we think about this just for a second, if I find myself stressed out, if I'm feeling stress or anxiety, it could be something that's going on right here in the moment. But a lot of times, the stress or the thing that I'm feeling is something that's happened before, and I regret it, and I'm super sad about it, and I wish that hadn't happened, and I'm getting all worked up and stressed about it. Or something's going to happen. What's going to happen? What's my boss going to say? He called me on the phone and wants to meet with me. Uh-oh, what's that going to be? So I'm all worried and stressed out about what's going to happen. I feel like that 99% of our anxiety is happening because of something that's already gone or something that's yet to unfold. So what I think is important for us is to do what we can to become grounded in the current moment. A lot of times when I have worked with clients, if I could just even kind of say like a little thing, if I feel like a client is being stressed out about something that's already happened or reliving a trauma in some way, to be able to say, hey, like, what do you think of this picture that's on the wall here? What do you think of the color of the wall that's here? Or how are those shoes comfortable? How do they feel on your feet right now? Like that kind of thing. Interacting with our senses in the current moment. I'm here and now. I'm safe now. I'm alive now. I can breathe. There's things I can see. There's things I can touch. I can feel my back against the chair. I'm grounded. This is called a grounding technique, where I'm like able to feel grounded. I'm not where and when and then and there. I'm here and now. And that's the most important thing, to recognize I have this moment. The moment is the greatest present that we have, this present moment. And to be able to kind of revel in that moment and to think, what can I do? That's a real important thing for us as a sign of resilience, is how can I bring myself back to the present moment and not be so focused on what's yet to come and what things I might regret that have already happened. So I just like to just say all I can about being able to say, can I take notice? Can I be in this moment? Can I be grounded where I am and not worried about what's yet to come and what's already been? I'm here and now. So how about the next slide? This is something else that I feel like I probably shouldn't bring up as an ingredient for resilience for our group here. but the idea of being able to give something to other people. And I know that's all you do all day long. So I probably might not be the best thing to say to you, because I think sometimes maybe the thing we need to do is to give something to ourselves, because your whole life is often externalized into what do other people need, what do our clients need, what does my family need, and all that stuff. But can I do something nice for myself? You know, I'm a human, I deserve some nice stuff, and I can be nice to myself too. But just to think about how good it feels to be able to do something nice for someone, or to be able to do for others. And another part of this, I think, is to give thanks. You know, I feel like that for myself in my own prayer life, excuse me, that I feel like in my own prayer life, that I think a lot of times my favorite prayers are the ones when I'm able to say, thank you, God, for this, whatever it is. Thank you, God, for this great thing. Then I just feel fuller and I feel happier. But I feel like sometimes if I'm always like, hey, will you give this? Will you make me feel better? Will you make this go away? Will you do this for me? I feel like I'm just looked out of a sense of what I need, a sense of emptiness. But if I can say thanks for this, that's really a time to make myself sort of feel filled up and feel a little bit better. Imagine also when we can be able to say thank you to another person and give gratitude for them being a part of our lives. That's a really great thing too. That is part of resilience, is recognizing gratitude. Not always like, what's the deficit? What do I need? But what can I give thanks for what I already have? Okay, maybe the next slide. All right, and another thing that we can do for resilience is to think about, how can I learn something new? You know, I feel like many of us, our lives have become very small because we're stuck in this room, or stuck in that car, or whatever it is. But maybe I can think about something new. Maybe I can learn how to draw a little bit, or maybe I could learn to do something different, or maybe I could learn to exercise in a different way, or maybe I could read a new book or something like that. That's so important to kind of set a challenge for ourselves, because our brains thrive on learning. Our brains thrive on growing these new connections. You know, I feel like that we know that that throughout our lifespan, our brains are always growing new neuronal connections. You know, we talk about these different windows throughout our life that are really important for like learning language or learning math skills or whatever. Yeah, there are these windows, but that window is not totally closed until the last breath we take. Our brain is connecting new neuronal connections and growing. You know, you and I, our brains are different now than when we started this conversation. So that's a pretty cool thing to know, that my brain is always growing and it yearns for that. It desires that growth. So I think that that's just what makes people sharp in their older years. I got to say, my mom's going to turn 92 this month, and she's as sharp as a tack. And I think it's because, you know, she mastered these crossword puzzles. I mean, every day it's like her life work to do these crossword puzzles. But then if she gets good at the certain kinds, and then she'll do something else, and then she switches to Sudoku, and then she works a puzzle like a jigsaw puzzle, and then she'll read something new. So she's always challenging her brain, kind of getting good at something and then moving on to the next thing. There's always this new challenge. That's what's going to help us grow and be stronger and be mentally stronger as we grow older. So that's a big resilience factor too. So what about the next slide? Okay. So this is, if we were all here together in the same room, or you could do this in the chat box, is to put, have you noticed resilience in your friends, or have you noticed resilience in your colleagues at work? Maybe you could write that. I've noticed, I've gotten a thank you from a friend, or I noticed my sister is learning something new. She's learning to paint, or something like that. Maybe you could put that and share that in the chat box if you'd like to. That'd be kind of fun to see what's in the chat box as when we wrap up. So let's go maybe to the next slide. Oh, we can keep going, sorry. Those are resources that you can look up. So I feel like let's zone in on our particular work as care for others, the work that we do with others. I think this quote is perfect. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to walk through water and not get wet. That's really, really, really important to recognize, that I cannot be exposed day in and day out to people's suffering and people's struggles and not be impacted by it. To be honest, I thought I could. I thought, oh, I love helping people. This is going to be great. I'm going to love it. And this will be just perfect. I'll be joyful and all the time. And then I find myself thinking about my clients and worrying about them. And because we're humans, we see human suffering, we're going to connect with it too. And it's just a part of that attachment thing, that when I feel someone else, when I see someone else who is struggling, it triggers something inside of me. There's an empathic response that we sort of naturally have. And when I feel that feeling, it can bring me down a little bit and cause me to be distracted from my own health, and my own life, and my own family. So it's something that we just cannot ignore. So let's look at the next slide and kind of identify some of these issues. So if we think about this idea of when I am feeling stressed, stress is really, actually, it's a really good thing because it's a thing that's a protective factor. If something bad is happening in my external environment, I'm going to react, my body's going to react in a stress way to alert me something's wrong, I need to get out of here, or I need to do something about it, or I need to be motivated into some kind of action. So I need to be able to feel somewhat of an element of stress in my life to be able to motivate me to do stuff and to motivate me to stay safe. So it is sort of a protective factor. The bummer is when it goes over the edge and there's too much stress and we have too much going on. I'll talk a little bit further about that. Let's look at the next slide. So look at this. If we have just nothing going on, then it's a little bit down. We're just too little stressed. We're just laying around on the couch all day. That's kind of nice occasionally, but not all day, every day. So that's kind of a struggle of this time period, is that many people who are not working, or people that can't go out, or maybe they don't feel well, then they have to sit at home, and it's really not challenging to the body. And so no wonder people feel sluggish and sad and frustrated, and that can lead to feelings of depression and anxiety. Then we kind of move up into that yellow area. That seems to be kind of the optimal area. Okay, I got things to do, and I got a purpose, and I've got to accomplish some things. So I'm using my body, and I'm using my brain, and I'm doing what I need to do. But then sometimes we flip over into that next level. Our caseload has just gotten too big. You know, the cases are becoming more complex and more complicated because of the environment that we're in. Then we're kind of leading into the sort of an exhaustion phase, and then down into that burnout phase. And we know burnout is just an overload. It's just overload. As I was saying a minute ago, how much our brains love to have new connections made as we go along. Still also, the brain can only keep up with so much. It's a natural progression of growth. If there's too much, if it's just too much, then that enacts the stress and sort of a freeze response. So let's talk a little bit more about that with the next slide. I feel like we do kind of have this continuum, just kind of what I was saying. So we can go look at the next slide. So when we have sometimes something negative that hits us from, you know what, let's skip to the next one. This should be in the next one, maybe. Sorry. Ahead in the next one, sorry. These were, I think we're kind of, how about one more? Okay, so this is it. So all those were for the long version. We're in the abridged version. So let's see. For this, we kind of think about how the protective factor of what stress is. To think about, if we look at our ancestors from a zillion years ago, and we think about how those people were like come out of their caves or whatever, and maybe they'd hear or they would see a tiger, and there would be this bodily response, an automatic response from the brain down to the body to say, I'm gonna run out of here because I'm being told that there's some definite danger here. That tiger could really get me. So a quick burst of these neurochemicals that go through our body, cortisol, glucocorticoids are shot through our body in a brief, quick spurt. That's how it's supposed to be, to pump up our body. So we have dilated eyes, and our ears the eardrum gets a little tighter so we can hear better, focus on one thing a little bit better, so that we can get energy, get goosebumps or whatever, kind of run to be all this protective stuff. And how important that is to kind of to do that, it's protective. Well, then what happens when I get away from the tiger, then all that resolves. So then I can go back to sitting in the cave or hanging out with other cave people, whatever they did. And so that's kind of what they did. It was meant to be, to our body, the stress response is supposed to be short-lived. So it's an immediate jolt of these chemicals through our body that make us feel safe, and then it's resolved. But the bummer is, the next slide, when we realize that the tiger lives in our home or in our neighborhood or in our work office, whatever that is. We feel like that's a really, really tough thing, that when the stress is constantly coming upon us, then our brains are constantly sending out that cortisol or the glucocorticoids into our body, and that chemical is only supposed to be meant to be in there for brief amounts of time. But to know that if that's going through there, then our body adapts to it, and then we're just used to being stressed out, and then our body will then kind of yearns to be stressed out. And then also there's this function that's shut off. The brain shuts off after the cortisol is present in the body for so long. It shuts off the brain and prevents it from telling it to quit. So that's a really tough thing, because then we're always kind of stressed out. Did you know that people that have 1 or 2 or 3 maybe really difficult traumatic experiences in their life but when you might be able to function well or rebound well, have good resilience. But once you start getting to 4, 5, and 6 at that break 4, then there's much higher likelihood of depression and anxiety and just daily stress, because the body becomes acclimated to that environment, and it can be really tough. So what's the best solution for us to not be stressed out? It's to think about, how can I do things for myself? How can I learn new stuff? How can I engage new people? What can I do to try to break that cycle of my body being adapted to a stressful internal environment? So how about the next slide? So if we were to kind of talk about our brain, the brain activity, and how this all interacts with stress, we could say that, see that green part of the brain there? In that area, here's a fancy word, we call it the limbic system. And in there's a thing called the amygdala that's kind of like an alarm system. And it holds on to certain memories of our life, holds on to those certain memories. And then when some like a smell or a sense or a taste or a sound or a sight associated with the memory that indicates danger is detected by the human senses, then the alarm goes off, and then it tells the body, like, hey, we got to fight or flight, or we got to do something, we got to get out of here, we got to do something about it. So then it sends the body into the stress response. But what's interesting is that the limbic system does not alert or engage the prefrontal cortex, which is that red part of the brain up there. That's for thinking and logic and verbal stuff. That's all for all that stuff. So when we're in fight or flight mode or stressed out mode, we don't much engage the prefrontal cortex, but we're not thinking clearly very well. So oftentimes we're just kind of acting. And that's a stressful part of our life too, is that, gosh, if I get stressed out and I just respond in some sort of a way, then that can lead to negative outcomes too, because I've not planned it out or thought it out. So that's just something else to kind of think about. What can I do to kind of stop myself, to stop my rushing thoughts or whatever, and say, okay, where am I? What am I doing? Am I safe? Am I grounded? Am I in this moment? That type of thing. And then that can engage that prefrontal cortex to kind of think about, all right, well, what's going to be best for me in this situation? Okay, so what if we look at the next one? So, okay, if we look at this, if you hit the button to move to the next, I don't know if it'll work on this. Well, anyway, wait, maybe, I'm sorry, go back. If you could go back to that one. So this is sort of a thing. It lights up if we're in the normal thing. But if we see toxic stress externally, then that goes and is filtered through the brain, shoots out cortisol to the body, which is this stress alarm hormone to the body, and it impacts the immune system, and it impacts other bodily systems, and it brings about an inflammatory response. We know that depression and anxiety are associated with a great deal of inflammation in our bodies. And so that inflammatory response is a bit protective for us because it sort of protects the internal organs. But if it's constantly there, then it can be negative. Then we know that it really does, that cortisol impacts and has an interaction with the genetic makeup of our body. And then because the genes are altered, we know now that kind of that sort of stressful experience can be passed on to our children and our grandchildren. We know a lot about this now that we didn't know before. In fact, the perfect example of this is that grandchildren of Holocaust survivors have a much higher likelihood of experiencing depression and anxiety than do other populations controlled for other situations. So that's a really important thing just to recognize, that am I taking care of myself? Am I doing what I can to care for myself so that my body then isn't imprinted in a way that I'm passing on to my children if for that. So let's look and see if we can put this in another way. If the next slide. Oh, well, we can skip this one, sorry. Well, maybe this one too. Let's go on down to the one more. This one, okay. So this is our normal way of doing things, that we just observe stuff, we input comes into our brain, we interpret it, we think about it, and then we process it, and this is what I'll do. I could do 1, 2, or 3. Let me think about that. I'll make a plan and I'll do it. That's our normal way of doing things when things are all calm. But then if we look at the next slide, that our body will kind of react in a way that's really interesting. That when there's a stressor, when there's difficulty, when there's pain, when there's possible danger that's occurring, I'll see it, I'll sense it, my brain will start kicking in, that little green part of the brain is going to start the alarm system going, and I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to take the back road, the express route, and go over to action, which could lead to running or yelling or whatever it is, a not very thought out process, because that's not very protective. To, you know, if I see a tiger, I don't have time to stop and think out what my strategic plan is going to be to get through the situation. So I need to just act. So the same thing is going on. That tiger's in my home and in my life. So I'm thinking, okay, there's the tiger. It's my boss. It's my landlord requesting the rent. It's my whatever that's going to cause this stressful response. And I'm not going to think it through. I'm just going to act. And that's what gets us in trouble sometimes, is just jumping from one thing to the next. So we could look to the next slide and see that here's a real difficulty thing, because our body just gets used to it, and we make the that stressful express route the main way we do things. So we end up going from observation and sensation to action without thinking things through, and then we end up digging ourselves a bit of a deeper hole. That's too bad. So all this stuff to say, let's look at some positive stuff for just a few minutes at the next slide. So here's this guy, Phineas Gage. If I ever have a dog, I'm naming him Phineas because I love that name. And so this guy is sort of a model for what it is that's recovery and resilience and all these things, that we know that our body has this protective factor, which is the stress response. It's a natural part of who we are, but we don't have to live in it, and we don't have to stay stuck in it. We know that Phineas Gage had this terrible tamping rod shot through his head, but he survived, and his brain was able to kind of grow back some new connections. We know that when people have a stroke, there's oftentimes recovery will come because neuronal connections are made. Our brains have what we refer to as a great deal of plasticity. That sounds like a funny word with this, but really means is malleableness and growth minded. It's a growth thing. That even though there's maybe injury, or even though our brain is kind of convinced that it needs to be stressed out all the time, that we can reverse that stress. We can reverse it and have a bit of a healthier experience. So let's look at the next slide. So I think the issue is not how much stress or what the amount of stress is or what the stressor is, but how do I cope? What am I going to do to cope? And as you can see, the deer that's up in that tree has figured a way to cope with that hunter. You know, I showed that to a friend of mine, and he said, "Did deer really do that?" Well, no, that's a joke. Like that's, you know, so anyway, but that's just kind of a little thing, which brings up the importance of humor and finding humor in a lot of things. If we just think about how great it is to just kind of laugh and chuckle, what does that do to our body to kind of get some positive neurotransmitters running through? So that's just a little bit of a plug for some humor and things. So let's look at the next slide. Here's a pretty good resource for ourselves. If we're thinking about how am I going to kind of rechannel or think through this bodily response to stress, of where I'm going from noticing something stressful to moving into action, and maybe actions that aren't the healthiest or aren't the best for me, to look at something like this, to think about maybe I could look at how did my family respond to stress. Maybe you could do a little genogram. Maybe you know genograms through your social work training, to know that, like, how did my grandparents handle stress? How did my parents deal with things? How did I learn to handle stressful events from my parents? I think that's so important to think about. A lot of these things that we do that might be not that helpful, or maybe might be keeping us locked in the box, like from the very beginning, are thinking about, well, this is the way we do it, and this is the way I've always done it. I don't need to do anything different. But really, that can hold us down. So I think just recognizing, oh, that's where I got this. My parents reacted that way, or oh, my grandparents expected this certain thing or that. And how important that is to just recognize, to see how am I intergenerationally responding or learning how to deal with stress. That could be a great kind of an analysis to think, what do I have? Where did some of my stress response come from? Okay, and then let's look at the next slide. This one slide is another tool in social work, which is kind of an echo map. Wouldn't it be cool if we do these for clients, like here's the client, and then here's the school they go to, and here's the work that they have, and things like that, just kind of see the different aspects in their life. Well, the same thing could be done for myself. You could do it for yourself. This is me here in the middle. What resources do I have that are helping me with my dealing with stress? Wow, like myself, I love my Saturday afternoon tennis game with my friends. So I go and I love that. So that's a real resilient thing for myself. But then sometimes maybe negative self-talk is something that I can get into, and I need to recognize that that's not so helpful. But what are the resources that help me? And maybe what are some of the things that hold me back from exploring new ways for stress relief and stress management? So that's another tool. Maybe the next thing we could look at is to have a plan. I feel like having a plan is a big important thing. I know like how you saw when people are stressed out and they take that back road, that there's no planning involved or engaged. But what's really important, if I could stop and think, I know what I'm going to do when I start feeling stressed. When I feel that alarm system going off in my brain, I'm not going to stop and think about what am I going to do with this? But if I already have an exit ramp that I'm going to get off on, I know what I need to do. When I feel myself getting stressed out, I'm going to get up and go get a drink of water. Or I feel my heart kind of palpitating a little bit, I'm going to just go step outside and breathe, get a breath of fresh air. Something like that. Something would be just really, really, really great like that, to have an automatic plan for how you're going to deal when you find yourself in that sort of immediate stress response mode. And then to think about, what am I going to do to prevent that stress mode? What am I going to do to take care of my emotional life, my physical life? What am I going to do to take care of my spiritual life? How am I going to incorporate prayer life into my daily experience? Whatever those things are that I can try to do for myself. To make a plan, that's really important. Okay, what's the next slide? Okay, this is really big and really important, I think, for us, for me and you. See this picture here? So see the guy up there kind of above to the right? We'll say that's me. I never dress like that, never look like that. But anyway, if that's me there, then I'm putting myself above the client system that I'm serving. So what I'm doing is I'm putting myself up. I'm the answer guy. Just come to me. I'll take care of it all. Well, if I set myself up here and everybody else is down here and the clients are down here and they are coming to me for all the things that they need, that might feel good in the moment that I'm able to respond to all everyone's needs. Might help me with my burning desire to be all things to all people, but that's not helpful for me, and it's really not helpful for the clients. So if I see myself as the answer person, that just puts the burden squarely on me, and that everybody needs and everybody wants and everybody's hanging on me, and then I feel myself worn out and stressed out because I am not that. I'm not above anybody. I'm not the answer man. I may have access to a few resources that other people don't have, but I am not the one to be the answer guy. So let's look at the next slide and maybe another way to kind of reframe this. Look, if we looked at ourselves as the provider with the client system and engage with the client system, that helps empower the people that we're working for. It helps engage them in their own recovery. And I'm part of this system, that I'm not just the answer man. I might be doing my job to help them with some situations. And then therefore that leads to a lot less stress, because I don't have to respond to everything and meet everyone else's needs. That's an important thing for us to really think about. How am I approaching my clients? Am I a vending machine, or am I somebody that's engaging and helping people to think things through and to work things through, and how that is? And that can be a lot less stressful for me and you too. So let's next on the slide. I think I want to say that these are three important elements to the stress response system, is to recognize it, to see this is how my body's reacting. This is what I do when I'm stressed out. This is how I respond. I'm in this box, my brain's doing this thing, whatever it is. But then what can we do to reverse it? Sometimes people put like a little rubber band on their wrist and kind of snap the rubber band to kind of get themselves out of negative thinking. Or maybe they have reminders during the day, or maybe they've got a plan to think, okay, I'm getting stressed out, I'm going to go get a drink of water, or I'm getting stressed out, I'm going to go, what am I going to do to reverse that? And then just the resilience, to underscore again those things that I kind of talked about at the beginning, those ingredients of being active and recognizing the outside and connecting with other people and doing creative things for ourselves. Those are really important things that truly are science-based. It's not just, oh, this will feel good, try that, or something like that. It's for real. So I feel like these three R's are key factors. So maybe if we could look at a couple more at the next slide, we can maybe keep going. I kind of already talked about this. Maybe one more. Oh, this one. Okay. This is something I'd like to kind of pass on to you, and then we'll take time for questions. So this is a little thing about that recognition deal. So I call it like the recognition equation. So think about this. Think about your day during your life, or just think about your life as a whole. What are things that I really, really value? What are things in the world that I value? I value relationships. I value friendships. I value my work. I value creativity. I value exercise. I value artwork, whatever it is, things that I value in my life. If I could ask you to think, maybe write down if you have a pencil, 2 things that you really value in your life, things that you really make your life better, that really make you feel better about yourself, and that help you enjoy life. Two valuable things. Okay, think about that. All right, then those 2 things that you've written down, I wonder if tonight and for the next few nights, if you could stop and think, how many hours or how much time today did I spend on these two things that I really value? So say, for instance, if I put creativity and relationship are two things that I value. And if tonight when I go to bed or get ready to go to bed and I kind of look back at my life and maybe I'm kind of looking at my day to day, okay, well, gee, all I did was return emails all day long about like, logistical things or financial aspects, approving, payment requests or something like that. Well, there's no creativity, and I was at the computer all day, and the only way I was having a relationship was telling people what they could spend or not spend over email. That's not a relationship. So I've spent no time today engaging in two things that I think are really important to making my life valuable. So let me tabulate up the number of hours that I've spent with these two values. Right at this point from that example is 0. So then I want to kind of check myself. How did I feel at the end of today? How do I feel about this day? Then I could kind of put it on a scale from great, +2, +1, 0, -1, -2, -2 being terrible. Where did I feel in there in between? So right now I'm thinking I'm not feeling too good, and so I'm feeling about a -1. Well, when I stop and think, I didn't get to do any of the two things I really value the most. I'd had nothing to do with either of those today, so no wonder. Well, let me think about this in an equation. So let me tabulate this together. Say I spent 2 hours today engaged in creativity. Then I spent 5 hours relating to friends. So those two values I got that's 7 hours of really exciting stuff. And then I felt like today was a 1. It was a good day. I had a 1. Well, then my rating for the day is 8. Wow, that's pretty cool. I got a good rating for the day. And I write that down. But then maybe the next day, gosh, I only got to do 1 hour of anything creative at all. And then really I didn't talk to anybody except for this one coworker over by the water cooler for a little bit. So that's a 1 there. And then I really don't feel good about my day. So I'm at a -2. Well, that's a 0. So that day today is 0. So I wonder if I could challenge y'all to think about your days as they come in the next few weeks. And if you were able to kind of do this little equation, how many hours did I spend with what I value? How did I feel about the day? And then what's the equation from that? What's the result of that? Did I feel, do I have an 8? Do I have a 7? Do I have a 5? Do I have a -2? What do I have? And to think about that and then kind of tabulate at the end of the week. Well, no wonder I'm anxious and stressed out. Every day is I'm in the 0 or the 1 or the -2. But maybe if I'm thinking, I must be doing things pretty good. I'm at 8, I'm at 7, I'm feeling pretty good. So that might be a way to kind of think about, how am I living my life here? Am I really engaging with my values? And am I assessing about how I feel internally? Not like what somebody else would think about my day or what I should have been doing or ought to have been doing, but how did I really feel about the day today? And how am I really feeling at this moment at the end of the day? That's really important. And I think this little equation could help do a little an analysis to help me recognize what needs to change in my life, and do I need to do some more resilience factors or bring in some more of my values in my life. So I've been, let's look at another, maybe in the next slide or two. Well, okay, maybe a couple, look at just real quick, go the last few there. Maybe this one. One thing to do to kind of think about, like if at the end of the day or in a time when you're sort of in a stressed out mode, this is another little suggestion. If you've got your hand and you can take 5, if you kind of stretch your hand out and kind of as you trace each finger, you take up kind of like this over your finger, and as you think about it, breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. This kind of slow, calming sort of breathing, just 5 good, deep, full breaths can really help us with our stress. Because I think sometimes what happens when we get into a stress mode, like we start breathing short, shallow breathing, or maybe we're breathing out more than we're breathing in, and that triggers that part of the brain to say, uh-oh, he's in stress, then that's going to start elevating that stress response and the glucocorticoids running through our body. And then that's going to cause like nervousness, and that's not going to be very helpful. So I feel like if we could think, I want to breathe in and breathe out, but then be sure to breathe in more than you breathe out, because if you breathe out a lot more, then that'll trigger that part of the brain that says, oh, he's not getting oxygen, which is a real sign of stress and anxiety. So if we can just think about that way to kind of get that breath into our body, and to just kind of take a second or two and to be grounded in this moment, that's a real stress stopper right there. All right, let's see what else is in the next slide. Okay, we can keep going. and then we can keep going. I guess we probably should wrap it up anyway. So maybe we could just zip to the very last one. There we go. Oh, maybe one more. Yeah, there you go. To just think, I want to relax, take deep breaths, do what I need to do, have fun, engage, with others, to find some time to laugh and have some humor, take deep breaths, and always, as we do at Catholic Charities, have faith in each other and faith in God, that we're all going to be okay. So that's that part. And of course, I've gone for an hour, but I wonder if there's questions here. So how about we have some, let's see. Okay, I'm going to just start with a couple questions, and Ben, tell me when I should cut it out. Okay, I can hear both of you. That's a good one. Can we download the slides? I think so, Ben. That's right. You can download the slides. That's.
Yep.
I'm willing to share.
Slides will be sent out to everybody after this, in a recording and a SurveyMonkey link to the evaluation and post-test if you're going after the continuing education credit for social workers and counselors.
Yeah, good. Okay, I noticed that the more you give, I noticed the more you give to others during this time, the better you feel. That's really one of those resiliency factors. That's really good. Thanks for saying that. Mary said that, and then my friend adopted a dog. That's a whole other thing that you could talk about. I teach at the College of Social Work at the University of Tennessee, and we have a veterinary social work certificate that we give to our students, that if they take these classes and do a field placement, then they can get this veterinary social work certificate. And you wouldn't believe how important it is what animals can do to kind of help people and relieve stress. It's just great. Let's see. Would you be able to send? Yeah, we're going to send the slides out for sure. Oh, and you want to see the slides I skipped? Yeah, totally. You can see those when I send them out. Can I reflect on the challenges of living ourselves through this pandemic, financial, educational crisis, meanwhile trying to support clients who are living through the same, if not worse? We're on this parallel process, which makes doing our jobs even harder. You're absolutely right there. I feel like that, to me, when I think about all this, I feel like that all these things that we've kind of talked about are these resiliency factors, but also realizing that that it's a bit of a time period here where we really are all in this together. That really is a great deal of community that we share with one another, and how important that is. And and then how much do we reveal to clients about what we're feeling and what we're experiencing? The clients, they can know that they're not alone. Yeah, I struggle with this too. I feel like that can be a little bit of a benefit, for ourselves and for the clients, too. And I think sometimes when we're offering service or help or whatever to others, then maybe we can end up getting insights for ourselves. They say that that those who teach this stuff learn it better than the students ever would. So I wonder if it's the same thing for ourselves. If we're doing things for other people during this time period, if I'm able to learn from or get insights for myself as I engage with others. So let's see, we got lots of people went to. Oh, good, thanks. And then I like the genogram, good. Okay. And then okay. How important is being appreciated and acknowledgement by supervisors and managers? I feel like that's a great question too. That we know that this research study was done a few years ago, that what's the best thing or the best, most motivating thing for an employee at their agency or at their workplace? You could talk about pay, you could talk about the corner office, but really it's an acknowledgement, a specific acknowledgement for a specific thing from your supervisor that really makes work satisfaction really go up. It's not how much you're paid. It's all that. It's a specific recognition for a specific action that's done by a supervisor. So if any of you all are supervisors, maybe just to think, getting people in and saying, hey, I noticed this specific thing that you did and I thought it was great. That kind of thing is really a right on. And then another thing for supervisors is, I think sometimes we tend to want to, I think sometimes have a tall or like a long chain of command, but if we're able to do what we can to kind of flatten that chain of command to where, we have easier access to those that are the supervisors, to where we can interact with one another, then we see how this time is impacting all of us and how important that is, and to kind of engage in communal experiences like that. That's I think an invaluable kind of step too. Let's see. Oh, cool. You have sister circle group with your friends every Wednesday. That's awesome. That's a great resilient thing. Let's see. Okay. Great question. Is it important to do things together with your coworkers that is not related to work but fun to increase? I mean, I absolutely think so. That it's important to do things with your coworkers that really aren't necessarily work. In fact, when I was the executive at Catholic Charities East Tennessee, we had 4 staff days a year. We had a lot of training to do, and there were always some new form that had to go over and some new policy to go over. But we always took time to have a meal together, and that was one thing. But during the meal, we'd try to do some sort of like interactive thing, or play a Jeopardy game, or do something. In fact, one year we found out that not many of the people at each of the different programs knew as much about the other programs. So we played a game, and people were running around, and it was kind of this fun game where they had to pull things off the wall, and it was really funny. And like that built such a unity for us. And that, like, I know myself as the director, I feel like it helped me to know some of the people that worked in other parts of the agency that I just didn't know that well before. And then it opened a door for me to be able to talk to them, and for them to come talk to me. That it didn't have to be, oh, look, here comes the executive trying to get after me. It's that, oh, look, there's Reagan, and I can talk to him or whatever. You know, it's kind of like that. And that was a great thing. So I do really encourage that kind of thing. What can we do to bring about some sort of fun or a little bit of laughter together? I think that's really important. I think people feel more connected when we laugh together than anything. And so when we're expressing emotions, and if we can have some kind of fun, engagement, that's great. And I suggested a meal together. In marriage and family therapy, I always have told couples that if they're struggling in the relationship and say, well, what are you doing together? Well, we eat dinner together. Well, that's great, but then you're just sitting there doing this biological function. Shouldn't you be doing something that's kind of goal directed together? So like go out and pick up cans together with your spouse, and maybe that'll give you like a common goal together. And then it's not just looking at each other trying to talk or come up with something, but you're doing something together. You're focusing on something else. And I think that's true of the workplace as well, to think, well, how can we do something together or accomplish something together? That'd be really kind of a neat thing. How did I learn to handle stress and impacts? How did I learn to handle stress and that impact? Oh, it does impact our children. I think it really does. Yeah. Like the diagram that explained the response to stress, the negative impact of shortcut. Okay. Oh, good. Thanks. Any other questions about anything? Well, we've overrun our thing, so it looks like that those are the questions. And I'm glad to see that so many people came today, and we'll be willing, like Ben said, that we'll be willing to share the PowerPoint, and hopefully these are just a few things that you can think about. And this is a big deal, is that God created our body to respond well to stress, and then I think we as humans sometimes we put all these extra things going on in our lives, and that ends up kind of impacting us in a negative way, and that's that negative stress, the distress that we live in. And so what can we do to try to support ourselves and support each other to strive through this? So I guess that's it.
So thank you so much, Father Reagan, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Thank you for dealing through the little slide fiasco at the beginning. Made it through. We'll figure that out, and just want to thank you all for being a part of this. And one more time for the attendees, social workers, and counselors. So for all of you on right now, you're going to receive the recording, YouTube link, the PDF slides, and a SurveyMonkey link. And then for those counselors and social workers who want that continuing education credit, just click into the SurveyMonkey link and do the quick evaluation. And then there's a little 10-question post-test, and you just submit that. And within 10 days, we'll get you your CE certificate. And feel free to reach out to me with any questions at all. And just wanted to thank you because we had a large crowd today, and super appreciate you guys tuning in. And send your ideas for webinars that you'd like to see. And we'll definitely have Father Reagan back again soon. So thank you all so much, and hopefully see you in person soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.